He didn't look like a movie star anymore. Covered in dust, sweat cutting through the grime on his face, and eyes scanning a battlefield that felt brutally real, Jamie Dornan appeared almost unrecognizable. For audiences who once associated him with polished suits and controlled charm, this version was jarring, raw, exposed, and stripped of everything that made him safe on screen. And yet, that transformation is exactly what makes his return in the Siege of Jadotville so unexpectedly powerful. The film itself tells a story that many viewers had never even heard of, despite its roots in real historical events. Set during the Congo crisis of the 1960s, it follows a small battalion of Irish UN soldiers sent into a volatile region with limited support and unclear orders. What unfolds is not a heroic fantasy, but a tense and often claustrophobic fight for survival against overwhelming odds. There are no grand speeches to save the day, no cinematic shortcuts, only the slow, creeping realization that these men have been placed in a situation far more dangerous than they were led to believe. Within that environment, Dornan steps into the role of a Kerry man, a soldier defined not by bravado, but by quiet resilience. His performance doesn't rely on dramatic gestures or exaggerated emotion. Instead, it builds through subtle shifts, tightened expressions, measured reactions, and the constant weight of responsibility pressing down on every decision. It's a portrayal that feels grounded, almost documentary-like at times, forcing the audience to stay with him in moments of uncertainty rather than offering easy escape. What makes this transformation even more striking is the contrast with Dornan's earlier global image. Just a year before, he had been widely recognized for his role in 50 Shades of Grey, where control, confidence, and carefully constructed intensity defined his character. That version of Dornan thrived on precision and allure, a performance built to captivate through mystery and dominance. But here, all of that is deliberately dismantled, replaced by vulnerability, fatigue, and a sense of unpredictability that feels far more human. Behind the scenes, the production itself mirrored the harshness of the story being told. Filming conditions were deliberately kept rugged, with minimal reliance on artificial comfort, allowing the cast to physically and mentally immerse themselves in the environment. Reports from the set describe long days under extreme heat, limited resources, and an emphasis on realism that blurred the line between acting and endurance. For Dornan, this wasn't just another role, it was a test of how far he could push himself beyond the expectations that had been built around his name. As the narrative unfolds, tension builds not through spectacle, but through restraint. Each passing moment adds another layer of pressure, as communication breaks down and support becomes increasingly uncertain. Dornan's character is forced to make decisions without clear guidance, balancing the instinct to survive with the duty to lead. It's in these moments, when hesitation could mean disaster, that his performance reaches a quiet intensity, capturing the internal conflict of a man who cannot afford to show fear, even when it's clearly present. One particular sequence stands out as a turning point, where the illusion of control completely collapses. Surrounded, outnumbered, and cut off from reinforcements, the soldiers are pushed to their limits, and the weight of reality becomes impossible to ignore. Dornan doesn't overplay the moment. Instead, he allows it to settle into something more unsettling, a realization that survival may depend not on strength, but on endurance and trust in those around him. It's a scene that lingers, not because of what is shown, but because of what is felt beneath the surface. For many viewers, this role reveals a side of Jamie Dornan that had been overshadowed by his earlier success. It challenges the assumption that he belongs solely within a certain type of character, proving that his range extends far beyond what mainstream recognition might suggest. And yet, despite the depth and commitment of his performance, the film itself did not receive the level of attention that might have cemented this transformation in the public eye. That quiet reception adds another layer to the story, one that makes his return feel almost like a rediscovery rather than a continuation. Watching him in this role now, with the benefit of hindsight, it becomes clear that something significant was happening beneath the surface. Not just a shift in genre, but a deliberate move toward roles that demand more, reveal more, and perhaps risk more. And as the dust settles on the battlefield he inhabits, one question begins to emerge. Was this the moment Jamie Dornan truly stepped beyond the image the world had created for him, or was it a turning point that audiences simply weren't ready to recognize yet? Years after its release, something unexpected began to happen. The Siege of Jadotville quietly resurfaced, not through massive promotion or awards buzz, but through word of mouth, streaming recommendations, and a growing curiosity about overlooked performances. Viewers who had initially missed it, or dismissed it, started to revisit the film with a different perspective, and suddenly, Jamie Dornan was no longer just the guy from 50 Shades. He was something else entirely, something more grounded, more complex, and far more unpredictable than many had given him credit for. What drew people back wasn't just the story of a forgotten battle, but the emotional undercurrent running through Dornan's performance. This wasn't a character designed to impress, it was one built to endure. Beneath the uniform and the tension of combat, there's a constant negotiation between fear and responsibility, a quiet struggle that never fully resolves. Dornan captures that internal conflict with a restraint that feels almost uncomfortable at times, as if the audience is witnessing something too real to be easily categorized as entertainment. As discussions grew online, a new narrative began to take shape, one that reframed the film as a hidden turning point in Dornan's career. Many started to argue that this role, rather than his more commercially successful projects, was the one that truly demonstrated his range. It wasn't about charisma or screen presence in the traditional sense, but about the ability to disappear into a role so completely that the actor becomes secondary to the experience itself. For an audience accustomed to associating him with polished, stylized performances, this shift felt almost like a revelation. At the same time, this re-evaluation sparked a deeper conversation about how certain performances are recognized, or overlooked, within the industry. Timing, marketing, and audience expectations often shape perception more than the work itself, and in Dornan's case, the shadow of 50 Shades of Grey may have unintentionally limited how seriously he was taken in more demanding roles. It's a reminder that breaking away from a defining image isn't just about choosing different projects, but about waiting for the audience to catch up. There's also a subtle irony in how the film's themes mirror its own journey. Just as the soldiers in the story were placed in a situation where their efforts went largely unrecognized, Dornan's performance existed for years without the attention it arguably deserved. That parallel adds a layer of meaning that goes beyond the narrative itself, turning the film into something more than a war story. It becomes a reflection on visibility, acknowledgement, and the quiet persistence of those who continue regardless. But perhaps the most intriguing aspect of this resurgence is what it suggests about Dornan's trajectory moving forward. Rather than chasing roles that reinforce his established image, he appears drawn to characters that challenge it, that require him to strip away familiarity and step into uncertainty. That willingness to take risks may not always result in immediate recognition, but it builds something more lasting, a body of work that evolves over time, revealing new dimensions with each revisit. And yet, the question remains, why did it take so long for this performance to be fully appreciated? Was it simply overshadowed by larger, more commercially driven projects, or was there a hesitation to see Dornan in a different light? The answer likely lies somewhere in between, shaped by both industry dynamics and audience perception. What's clear, however, is that the conversation has shifted, and with it, the way his work is being understood. Now, as more viewers discover or rediscover the Siege of Jadotville, the film carries a different weight than it did upon release. It's no longer just an under-the-radar war drama, it's a piece of a larger narrative about transformation, both for the actor and for the audience watching him.